Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our show about the middle marvels. Mr. Starcheski and I are very excited for this part of our show where we get an opportunity to be able to recognize excellence in the classroom, both inside and outside of the classroom. And tonight we're not going to disappoint because we have a true rock star, and I'm a little bit biased because she's at our school right now. But remember this, as we recognize middle marvels, they get recognized by their peers. And I think that's so important to put out there when your colleagues recognize the great things that are happening and they send their names to us. We want to make sure we do our best to recognize that excellence in the classroom. So that being said, hello, Mr. Starcheski, and welcome back to another Middle Marvels episode, number 7.
Dean, you know what? It's super exciting every time we come together live, whether it's our Unlock the Middle time or our Middle Marvels time or our Principal's Perspective, because we talk about middle level education and bring some of our tips and tricks into reality. But more importantly, tonight is a night in this segment where we're able to showcase talents from the classroom that influence other teachers to be better. And I've worked with our guests in the past on a couple of different projects. I've gotten to see her innovative practices, her style, the way she relates to the kids, but more importantly, the way she thinks about teaching and learning. And it's pretty exciting to be able to bring her content area alive and involve the kids in their learning and make them hungry to get their learning going.
Well, I tell you what, Chris, when I walk by her classroom, she's got centers set up. She's got some project-based learning going on. She's really making that learning come alive for kids. It's not just an instruction lesson from the front of the class by a teacher. It's hands-on, and it's really good stuff. So that being said, I'm going to tell you what, why don't you bring in our middle marvel as I introduce her. Tonight, we're going to recognize Kristie D'Angelo, grade 7 math teacher at Charlton Middle School. Kristie has a pedigree and a background of teaching for 25 years in our district. And each year she gets better and better. And I know she redefines and reinvents herself and makes sure that her craft is fresh and really invigorating for kids. And Kristie, welcome to our show. I know how excited you are to be here tonight.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kristie, you've got quite the pedigree and a heck of an introduction from Mr. Packard, but we want to know a little bit about who you are. So let's start talking a little bit about what your journey to become a middle-level educator is all about and how you ended up where you are right now.
Well, if I go back to like the beginning of even just wanting to become a teacher, I was 6 and I knew first grade I wanted to be a teacher. But I think it really sunk in for me in 5th grade, and we didn't have a middle school at that time, but the 5th grade teachers, they were a team concept, and that was the pair of teachers that first recognized that I was intellectually advanced and could handle more than what the other kids could. So they both started to push me a little bit that year, and I'll never forget my 5th grade math teacher, Mrs. Rosado, who actually taught me base 5 in 5th grade because she just needed something to help me expand my horizons. So from there, I went to school at Bridgewater, triple majored in elementary ed, special ed, and psychology, and graduated with my peers in 4 years. It required a couple courses of, heavy semesters, but not too bad. And then I got a job here at Dudley Charlton right out of college, and I've been here since. Started with special education 4 years, 12 more years in the regular education class in 6th grade, and then this will be my 9th year in 7th grade teaching just math.
Wow. I love the fact that you recognize, and that's an incredible journey, but I love the fact that you recognize another educator who was the antecedent to really push you to get into this business. And we all have those in this business. So thank you for bringing that up. An amazing journey there. Talk a little bit about when you're looking at your career, what are some of the challenges you've had to overcome to be in the position that you are today? 25 years, that's a long time. I know that I'm at 28, 29 right now, but it's a long time to be in the business. So talk about some of the obstacles you've got to overcome.
I really, it's hard to say because right now I feel as though it's been smooth sailing my entire career, like up until COVID. COVID has definitely thrown a kink into things. I would say, I honestly and truly, my biggest challenge I've ever faced is teaching this COVID world. And knowing that not only do things change like week to week, day to day, hour to hour, it's minute to minute. And you just have to be able to roll with it and kind of just adjust and shift your dynamic to make it work. Obviously with the way today played out, I've got a lot of shifting to do, a little bit of adjusting to do, and, we'll make it work. It'll all be fine. But I really don't feel as though I've had anything that's been challenging. I've enjoyed every portion of my career. I've enjoyed every step along the way. I look at each piece as just a building block to get me to where I am right now.
It's a great perspective, and identifying the current challenge that we're in as being the biggest, is probably pretty accurate. Outside of your first year teaching, when the principal comes in and tells you that you're going to be teaching X, Y, and Z, and then a couple of days later you realize it's for real. COVID certainly threw a monkey wrench into all of our worlds.
Right.
Dean mentioned, when he comes by, he sees centers and stations and project-based learning. I've seen some of your innovative approaches to thinking about creating some authentic math tasks. How do you really approach bringing real life into the math lessons to provide meaning and real levels of engagement to your kids?
Well, I mean, within the math class, I try every day to present the math content of the day in some sort of a real world situation, just so the kids can see why they need to learn it. So many ask, what do I need to know this for? And it's not always easy to do that. And I will say there are days when I can't, but for the most part, I work it in as often as possible. Recently, I've worked really hard on trying to implement more projects that give kids a reason to do the math. Like, they have a reason to do math. It's not just like, here's a project, do this. A couple of years ago, we, as a grade level, worked on a project to basically write a proposal to create a school store. And the kids actually flew with it, and from the ground up, they developed inventory, they figured markup percentages, they figured markup prices, they determined the quantities of inventory that we needed, and they found cases and helped write letters to solicit donations from local businesses. So, with a little help from a grant from the DCEF Foundation, we were able to pull it into fruition and actually put it into play, and it's just been amazing. I'm not sure how that will work this year, but we did have 2 years of really, cool times. The kids, totally student run. I'm just the kind of supervisor. And then this past year, project I came up with was, at the beginning of the year, a classroom makeover, remodel kind of a thing. So the kids were very busy with a lot of measuring, a lot of dimensions, taking to figure out calculations of area and space and such, because they were tasked with coming up with the ideal learning environment. What makes a learning environment more ideal than another? And they had to come up with research-based ideas, and they told me what color paint should be used for the walls because it stimulates learning, what kind of chairs, what kind of tables. I wrote another grant for that and did receive it, just need to figure out when and how to be able to put it in place. But I'm really excited about that. That will be a real, true, great thing to see. The unfortunate thing is the kids who did all those proposals will be in high school probably by the time it goes into play. But I invite them to all come back and check it out, when we're free of all this COVID restriction, and, come back and visit. I love it when kids do that. It's always fun to see and hear how they're doing as they've moved on.
Super passionate, and bringing in that real world experience is so powerful. I can think back on some projects that I did when I was a math teacher, and they were extremely meaningful. And some of them are still standing at Charlton Middle School back in the day when I was there. Things that the kids created as, we put them to work. And congratulations on a storied career so far with those types of ideas.
I put them to work too, because I run a financial system in my room as well, where they apply for jobs, pay rent. It's kind of a little thing to teach them the value of money and how it works.
I think Mike Miller from Ditch That Textbook would love this. There's no textbook learning, minimal textbook learning happening in your class.
I have
and again, you have the book, but the book is not the curriculum. Always remember that.
No,
you venture out into a wide casting net. So that's fantastic. And you're really not giving yourself justice here, because you single-handedly started that school store and made it into a school-wide operation where kids were running a business. And I'm going to plan a season 2 to start thinking about what online sales could look like for our school store. That's chapter number 12 in your book. So okay. I want you to start thinking about that as we kind of get that rolling. But you know what, beside that, teachers are seen by their kids as that superhero in the classroom, person who's teaching that content. What else makes you tick? What else do you do? What are your hobbies? What are your interests for all those people out there watching?
Well, I've always loved to read. I'm very passionate about reading. In fact, everything, under the sun. I have I try to balance my reading, especially over the summer, with pleasure reading and educational reading. So I have math books, I have, different kinds of theory books and whatnot that just to kind of help improve my craft, I guess you'd say. But in addition to reading, I absolutely love pictures and scrapbooking. Like that ties in like a significant passion for me. I've always loved pictures, and when I was introduced to scrapbooking 18 years ago, I just haven't turned back on that one. To the point where I've kind of invested in business. I have side businesses and what related to it, and within the past couple of years, I've actually brought it into the classroom. I offered a scrapbook club after school one year, and the past 2 years, I've actually had the kids. Well, this year didn't work out that way, but a year before, I had the kids actually create classroom pages for their blocks of pictures I had taken throughout the year, activities they'd done, things they'd done. And it was kind of cool seeing their perspective, how they put it together, how they see the layout to go. But I do have that book kind of in process that I'm working with, and I'm just going to take whatever I did get for pictures from last year and put them together myself, because unfortunately the kids weren't able to finish that up for me. So they left me with a little work to do.
Sometimes picking up their scraps is not a bad thing. When they're picking up our scraps, it can be kind of tough.
Right.
But, I was just looking around the room, and I've got a lot of scrapbooking materials here. My wife, who's also an educator, got involved and invested in Creative Memories a few years ago. And it's, we've got some great materials and supplies here. Those build memories, though, but the memories really build connections that last, a long time. And, when our passions and interests can influence the kids, it's really important. It's really powerful, and it's really special. What really excites you, gets you fired up, gets you jazzed up for instruction, and get your juices flowing in the classroom?
I think it's the kids, helping the kids and the students every day to see that they can achieve great things, and then watching them do that, like, knowing that they can, and I know that they can, but getting them to believe that they can sometimes takes a tremendous amount of work and effort. But I absolutely love it when kids have those aha moments. Even when it's a year or two later, I had, I've got a bulletin board on the wall, mindset one, that says, the power of yet, the most powerful addition. I don't get it yet, and I will say that to them until they start saying it themselves. And one of my students did come back one year in 8th grade, and she came flying upstairs during one of her breaks. I'm like, you're not supposed to be in here, but she wanted to let me know that, like I said, it clicked. Her brain finally turned on, and she gets it now. And she's like, I remember how I didn't get it, but I get it now. She's like, I knew I would do it. And it was just, those kinds of things kind of make it worthwhile, because, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help them make those connections, help them see that they can do, and they just have to believe it.
There's the fan club coming in. It's all good. Hey, Kristie, a quick question. I don't want to sell yourself short on this. I mean, great teacher in the classroom, but you also have a huge influence outside the classroom for a number of years. You've really pinpointed St. Jude's as an area of importance for you, and you've raised thousands and thousands of dollars through math and using math and collections. And why don't you talk to us a little bit about that? Because I think it's important that people in the community know about it.
No new questions, huh? Okay. The math-a-thon for St. Jude actually had a personal connection for me, because when I was back in elementary school, our school participated in the math-a-thon. And it was probably, back in 2008, I think, when I broached the subject with administration and said, could we? That was after I researched to see if it still existed, which it did, slightly different, but I thought it was kind of a cool thing to bring math and also raise awareness for children who are otherwise not as blessed as the children that I work with to be healthy, and to know that these parents don't ever have to worry about paying for anything. They don't ever have to worry about a bill and not having the coverage to be able to handle getting their children well. The only focus for St. Jude is to get the children to be well as best they can. I can recall as a child watching the television show that Marlo Thomas would do with Danny Thomas, the founder, and it broke my heart, because they would showcase 4 kids, and usually one didn't make it, because at the time their rates were a little lower. Success rates for getting into remission and curing and kind of getting them on the right track are so much higher nowadays, and it's basically due in part to their fundraising. They don't, they rely on fundraising 100%. So I figure it's the least I can do to try to give back and try to help the kids see that they can do a little something to give back. And, that's another thing we didn't get to last year because it was supposed to be held in March.
Yeah. Well, sorry to throw that question at you, but I knew
No,
it was
that's okay.
and I knew how much that meant to you. So
Exactly.
that's going to segue into my last question. And quite frankly, thinking back over your 25 years, if you had a new educator coming next door to you and just starting out, what kind of advice would you give to that individual as they begin their journey to navigate through the new world that we're learning about education?
Right. I think back to where I was when I started 25 years ago, and it's so different. But, just be yourself, have fun, be ready to have fun, and, don't hide who you really are. Let the kids know who you are, and be able to accept change and be ready to be flexible, because flexibility is number one. If you can't be flexible, you're not going to survive. Be sure to keep an open mind. I would probably recommend even connecting with some of the veteran teachers. They may seem like old to you and everything because you're really young. They might be old enough to be your parents, but they do have some wisdom and experience that comes with that age, and they are a resource that is invaluable. I know when I first started, I was, young chicken on the little roost of all these older people, and I was co-teaching with them and put in a position where I was supposed to kind of run things, and that felt intimidating. But don't let the age difference intimidate you. Just seek them out as experienced learners and realize that you're going to learn more, because I look at education and being an educator as being a lifelong learner. Continue to push yourself to learn and always go out there and get as much new knowledge as you can. I try to commit to a course at least a year, if not a conference and a course, to try to learn new things and find new ways to better my craft, because no one knows it all. No one can do it all. You have to keep reading, keep trying, keep learning to better yourself. And I honestly don't do the same thing twice very often. So
reinvent. That's the way of being successful.
The children probably do what dictates what happens. So,
Kristie, I can speak as your principal that you do amazing things each and every day. I hope you continue. I hope you continue to challenge yourself. I hope you continue to be that leader that affects the people around you, staying positive, learning, trying new things, not being afraid to fail, but more importantly, working hard to continue to keep that student engagement at a high level, because at the middle level is so important.
100% true. And, Kristie, thanks for coming on tonight and sharing your time with us and sharing your perspectives and your experiences. One of the big takeaways that I'm going to have is not only that you're a rock star, but I'm going to take away the lasting impression and the power that educators can have on their kids. You brought in some amazing examples tonight about how experiences with your teachers have influenced you. And you remember that a couple of years afterwards, about how powerful and how important that was and impactful it was to your craft and your future. And I know that you're having that type of impact on your kids. If they come back and share it, they're expressing it verbally, but I can guarantee you that you're making a positive impression on those kids out there as they move forward in their lives. Congratulations on being an amazing middle-level educator and for taking care of business with us here tonight.
Absolutely, 100%. Take care, and thank you for being Middle Marvels number 7.
Thank you for having me.